Hi, I'm Dr. Matt Julius, Chief Scientific Officer for CO2 Grow, a Toronto-based company that has a unique technology that enhances plant growth. What our system does is allow increased access to carbon dioxide by plants during the photosynthetic process. Today, I'd like to spend a few moments with you explaining exactly how that system works. All right, we'll start with basic principles. As any fourth grader can tell us, all life on Earth requires energy to go forward. And that energy for life to go ultimately comes from the sun. We, unfortunately, as animals, can't get energy directly from sunlight, and we're dependent upon plants. Plants are able to get sunlight and convert that solar energy into chemical energy through photosynthesis. Humans have been very good at enhancing or making photosynthesis work more efficiently to allow us to grow plants in agricultural situations to feed ourselves and access that chemical energy to do the things that we need to do metabolically. The things required to do photosynthesis are pretty easy. We need carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. And then, through the process of photosynthesis, we get sugar, water, and oxygen out. We then use those sugars to do everything metabolically. What we need to understand too is plants aren't making those sugars for us. They're making those sugars for themselves, and plants also need those sugars to do everything they need to do metabolically. Our interest in this video is the metabolic process of growth. Humans have been very good for hundreds of years of maximizing and making the photosynthetic process work in a very efficient manner. The three factors that we generally control are temperature, light, and hopefully carbon dioxide. Temperature, as we all know, if you've lived in the north or in the south, is relatively easy to control via air conditioning or heating. Again, primarily easier in an inside situation than an outside situation, or we can control it by which season we decide to grow our plants in. Light is generally given to us for free from the sun, but certainly the availability of LED lights and other technologies has made it easy for us to control light in indoor greenhouse situations. That leaves carbon dioxide as sort of the last major factor that we need to control to help maximize plant growth. We all know that carbon dioxide has been increasing in the atmosphere, but even at the incredible amount that it's increased over the last several hundred years, there's still not a lot of carbon dioxide relative to things like nitrogen and oxygen in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is over 70% nitrogen and over 20% oxygen. In fact, there's just a fraction of a percent of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere at any one time. As you probably already know, plants don't have lungs and they aren't actively pumping air into themselves to do photosynthesis. That means that they're dependent upon carbon dioxide molecules randomly entering from the atmosphere to make themselves available for the photosynthetic process. That's kind of problematic because less than 1 in 1,000 molecules available from the air is actually CO2. It's really difficult for us to increase that amount. Certainly lots of research on enhancing carbon dioxide has been done in situations in greenhouses where we've elevated the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And the reason that we've not elevated carbon dioxide beyond that 10th or 20th of a percent is because at elevations much higher than that, it becomes a very big danger to human health. So the question is can we increase carbon dioxide at a level above what we can do by just gassing the atmosphere? That's where CO2 Grow's technology comes into play. They have a patented process that allows the addition of carbon into water at very, very high concentrations. What's very, very high? 80 to 90% of the gases in water are carbon dioxide once CO2's process is complete. That carbon dioxide-rich water is then applied in a micromist, which creates a film around the plant's leaf. What that does is it creates a microenvironment that's separate from the atmosphere, and in that microenvironment, virtually all of the gas molecules are now carbon dioxide. So the process of getting oxygen and nitrogen that really don't help the photosynthetic process is gone. And every gas molecule that enters the leaf now is available for the photosynthetic process and can be converted into sugar that can be used as energy to run metabolic processes, which means that we have more
biomass per harvest, increasing the yield of plants that we grow. Now I know what some of you are thinking. You've been told forever that when you grow in greenhouse situations or in other agricultural outdoor situations that we don't want to overwater the plants, and we particularly don't want to water the shoot portion or the above ground portion of the plant too much, because that promotes bacterial diseases and fungal diseases. And that's an excellent concern. In fact, I've probably taught that in a class somewhere and said that very sentence to students. The reality is we have to remember two things. One, how much water is required to do grow CO2's process. And the reality is we're not doing this, but rather we're applying water in this fashion. The other thing that's very interesting is the way the microenvironment is created with the CO2 being in the water when it's initially applied, and the plants taking the CO2 out of the water as they require it for photosynthesis. The microenvironment moves rapidly from low pHs to high pHs. It's a relatively well-known fact that adding carbon dioxide to water causes pH to go down. That's through a process that produces carbonic acid, which we're not going to get into today. As that carbon dioxide is removed, the carbonic acid goes away and pHs move back to that neutral environment. What's great about that is bacteria and fungi generally don't like fluctuating pH environments. So while we want to worry about how much water goes onto a plant, in this case, that fluctuating pH actually acts as a little bit of a deterrent to some of those pathogens that often cause us a lot of grief and trouble. It's important to remember that that microenvironment that forms around the leaf is very small. That film of water is less than a millimeter in thickness. Now that's important for two reasons. One, it means that we can get to these very high levels of CO2 in terms of the amount of carbon dioxide dissolved in that water without changing the background concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that we're breathing around the plants. That means safety. What it also means is that the amount of CO2 we have to add to get the plants to grow bigger is far less than what we would require to enhance the atmosphere to get the same results. So it's safe and it saves money over conventional methods of adding carbon dioxide to plants. Okay, this is going to be the first of what we hope are going to be many videos that you should be able to find on this channel in the future. Should you have any questions about CO2 Grow or the technology, please don't hesitate to contact us. I hope that you will look us up in the future and view some more of our videos.